All right, it's 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started because I know everybody has busy schedules. Thank you so much for being here today. This is going to be more interactive, and so I've got this microphone. I'm told that I need to, because Ethan's online there, before you talk, let me get to you. I will bring you the mic, and you can talk with Ethan as we start giving our input here. I know Mary Beth just contacted me. She was on her way, but she got held up at the office, and there may be several others that couldn't be here, but appreciate FPU for doing all this. We are imposing upon them every time we do this, and I appreciate it so much. This is a great service for the community, and they're filming it today, so we'll have it online so that not only the steering committee and county commission, planning commission can see it, but the citizens, people of Lincoln County can watch this, and if they have input, they can provide that too. So I've got a few more coming in here. Houston, I guess we'll start with you. You can get kicked off and then turn it over, and I'll be around. If you have something to say, some input, I'll come around with the mic.
I can help with
that one's right there. He's got one right there.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. It's been a little bit since we've met. I'm Houston Matthews with Croy Engineering. Thankfully, you're not going to hear much from me today, but we do hope this is a very interactive discussion and meeting today. So we're excited to hear your thoughts and input into the comprehensive plan. I hope that you all had a chance to read the email that we had sent before with some thoughts and ideas to some ways the discussion might lead. Ethan Green in our Chattanooga office is going to lead almost all of the discussion today, and the commissioner and I will be around to help. And just want to follow up to say thank you to FPU. Another benefit to recording it is that we'll get to go back and make sure that all of the comments and questions are included and addressed. So I don't have to take 10 pages of notes today. So thank you for that. And Ethan, if you'll take it away, please, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want most of this time to be devoted to you all. I know I can be a little bit long-winded, even if I can't hear anybody or see anybody. That's stop me from talking to a wall. But what we're doing here is we're getting towards the finish line. This is really the product that everyone should be most interested in. This discussion is going to be the basis for the recommendations that go into the comprehensive plan. They should be based on all of the work that we've done before on what is existing in our existing conditions, sort of what folks think that the pros and cons or strengths and weaknesses of the county are, and then the input that the public is given over our 2-month collection period, all of which is available to you all in its draft form. But the plan itself is broken into 4 main components that we discussed during the kickoff meeting, which is land use and zoning, housing and community development, transportation, and utilities. And so land use and zoning is going to be largely based on the future land use map. We'll have a discussion on that. That will probably be sort of like our SWOT, where I'll send out a draft version of the future land use map, and everyone will put on, send out their input, their thoughts, and then we'll go revise it in the same way that we did with our vision statement. So that leaves 3 that we really want to discuss today. If you brought in your thoughts or ideas for land use and zoning, hang on to those because I will still get them and collect them. Housing and community development, transportation, and utilities. I have a feeling, and maybe this is not true, that housing and community development will take the most time. So we're going to start with that, and then we'll go to transportation, and then we're going to go into utilities. I have some ideas or some formats here if we need that to get started, but really this is your time. This is a roundtable, a discussion, what needs to be done here. I can share my screen to show you the SWOT comments that we collected, just for thinking if I need to. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start with housing and community development. I'm going to open up the floor here, so whoever has the microphone, you're ready to pass it out. I want to hear either overarching goals that we want to achieve in the housing community development, these are broad, like lower the cost of housing. You know, that's a big goal. And then discuss the steps that we think that the county can take. So that this would need to be things that the government itself, the county government, and maybe it will involve partnership with community organizations, or maybe it will involve grants, or maybe it will involve public-private partnerships or working with the city. But it should be primarily county-led steps to achieve that. So the overarching goal is housing affordability. Maybe one of the recommendations that we come up with on how to achieve that is, to amend the zoning code, or I have something down here, consider a request for information with area housing developers, determine, what the major setbacks are in the Lincoln County market. But that's sort of, I'll take goals or recommendations, whatever you guys have thought about. Hopefully you come with some ideas, and with that, I'll open up the floor.
I didn't bring anything, can you throw up the discussion slides on there?
Can you put up that SWOT analysis?
So, yeah, here's the overall tally comments we got in
Can you make
SWOT.
that a little bit?
Yeah, Ethan, zoom in on that. We're in a large room here. It's hard to read, so if you could zoom in some, probably, maybe a little bit more than that would be good. There we go. Now we're talking.
So that's strength. We probably don't focus as much on this. Everybody can pat themselves in the back, because they've been a part of what makes what people think makes Lincoln County great, or what they've done well. What we really want to focus on, I don't know what, there we go, are going to be the sort of first 3 to 5 here in weaknesses. So infrastructure, that'll come up a lot with roads, utilities, retail and rec will fall under our housing and community development. Unplanned growth and zoning will fall under land use and zoning. And then we can scroll down here. Threats, folks who are worried about growth, folks who are worried about taxes, folks who are worried about the lack of growth, catch-22 there. Folks are worried about what's going on in surrounding counties, and folks are worried about crime. But I'm gonna leave it on this one unless somebody wants me to scroll to another area. But these are just sort of this is some public input. So if we come up with a recommendation and somebody comes and complains and says, well, why is this in here? You're doing whatever you want, or it's the good old boys club, and we don't have any voice. You can say, we have left this open for 2 months, and we collected over 300 responses, and this is what they told us that they were really concerned about. And you'll notice that our recommendations all revolve around, making improvements in those areas. So it really gives you some good grounding and support for the recommendations and projects that you think the county can do. And we can include short-term projects in the first 1 to 5 years. Having a couple of those would be really good. And then a couple midterm that are in the next 5 to 15 years. And then some long-term projects that are looking at the 10 to 20-year time frame. Because, go ahead.
Since we're talking about housing, just to kick us off, and I don't have any specifics here, I don't know how many of you have seen that housing study that IDB just got done, and I was shocked, actually. You remember the numbers, 300, we need
I can tell you.
300 something homes over $400,000.
I can tell you the disappointments IDB had was IDB, one of the things IDB has always said, we don't have housing for management of new industry. So they were looking for something that was said, yeah, we need some $500,000 to $750,000 homes, and the survey did not say that. It basically said affordable housing in the 250 to 275 was what we needed. Now, you can get anybody to do a survey, and Bonnie, who's sitting next to me, she knows where the market is as far as here in Lincoln County better than I do. But there's those people that just would be typical as a family experience. My son just graduated from college. He's not able to move out of the house, you know. He's not married. For what he makes, you know, if he wants to live in something half as nice as what he'll be leaving when he moves out of our house, he can't afford it. So affordability was the biggest thing out of there. But for people who are building really nice homes, most of those are either buying one that exists that's a $750,000 to $1.5 million, usually with some acreage, and then those people are reinvesting that money either the stage in life they are. One of our secretaries would be a typical example. Sold a farm for over $1 million, bought a house in town for $700,000, and they're in that part of their life, they are getting smaller, and they will reinvest that money in something that's not housing the difference in what they got in that. So, and I see that too, in that I think the upper management type houses, if I was a builder, I'm not going to go borrow the money or invest my money to build $1 million at 250 house in our market. So I think what came out of that study, whether the IDB didn't like it, I think it's true as far as, you know, we got the majority of our people need a house that's probably slightly over $200,000. Would you agree, Bonnie?
I would. You either have lower homes, lower prices, or we have the $1 million houses. There's nothing in between. And what's in between, 10 people are trying to get. And that would drive the price up. So the next person that puts it on the market is, well, my neighbor got that for their house. So it's a constant turnaround. There's just nothing in between.
So that's one of the needs, that mid-range market.
Yeah, but I'm like Mr. Bill, I mean, what investor wants to build a $700,000 house on the chance that someone would come in and want it when it could possibly sit there for a long time?
I have a question about the infrastructure piece of that.
That's in here.
Yeah, sure. So infrastructure is a pretty broad topic. Can you tell us some things that would fit into that? What all, we're talking about roads, utilities, what else?
Yeah, all of it. So you can go through in this, all these comments are now housed, I think, on the website. Daniel sent out that link. If you didn't get it, you can ask him to resend it. So this is what you're looking at here in terms of these categories, was me going through every comment that we received on our SWOT analysis and sort of scoring it or categorizing it. If you really want to know everything that encompasses it, you can go through and read every single response collected. Those are public. You know, if there was anything in there that used names or addresses, I tried to remove those for anonymity, but by and large, the comments that were collected, everybody can go and read so that there's full transparency and where this comes from. But infrastructure was, let's see, okay, that's going to be down here. Primarily complaining about roads, also including some sewer and some water, both in terms of we're concerned about aging existing infrastructure, lack of infrastructure in terms of utilities to support growth, a lot of road comments, so a lot of potholes or roads that are being poorly maintained or need maintenance. But it's sort of it's as broad as it sounds.
Transportation network and utilities.
So going back to that housing, The phenomenon that you are commenting on is well studied and well documented in the planning sphere. So we've coined a term called missing middle housing, where you get a lot of low income housing, and that gets built often because it's what's subsidized. So developers will go and chase money that you can get grant funding for, government funding for, that's subsidized somehow. And then you have a lot of new homes and developers going out and building projects that, they're business people, so they have to make a profit, and they're building bigger homes that they know that they can turn profit on. And then you just sort of miss out on some of these, maybe you're graduating fresh out of college, you gotta save up to buy your first home, but you don't want to live with your parents, but there's not and I hesitate to even say the word because it's sort of a dirty word in a lot of engagement settings, apartments that can support people for a few years until they're able to save up for that first down payment on their starter home. You're single, maybe you get a roommate, and you find somebody that you're ready to settle down with, and you're ready for that first starter home, and then you have kids, and you're ready to buy the bigger home, and then you retire, sell your farm, and you're ready to kind of downsize into something a little nicer, or reinvest that extra cash into your community in some other way. There's a sort of a whole life cycle in the housing market, and you can look at it a lot like you look at cars. When you're 16, you don't go out and buy a brand new BMW, unless you're really, really fortunate or lucky, where your parents are. You typically start with a late model import car, a beater, of course, speaking openly, and you get your first job, and that gets you through high school, and maybe through your first year of college, and you start working a little bit more, and you're able to save up and buy a nicer used car. Most people don't buy new cars because it's just so much more economical to buy a car that's been driven around for a couple of years. But there are some people in the high income brackets that are going to buy those $750,000 homes or buy those new cars. And when they do, they're the ones that are selling the car that's been driven for 2 years that most other people are buying. The problem is we don't really see that shift in the housing market. We don't see that supply. So if the bigger homes aren't being built for those folks to move into in the high income brackets, they take up all of the existing middle. Or, if the only thing that's being built is middle income housing and high income people still want a nice house, they're going to outbid all of the middle income folks for that home. So if a developer wants to come in and thinks they can make a profit, building a $750,000 to $1 million home, there's always a risk, but they've probably done the research and have a decent pro forma. And then when those folks move out of their middle income house that was built 15 years ago, it was up to a $300,000 home for somebody else to build. But there are a lot of things that we can do to encourage that sort of middle income or middle level housing that's not subsidized, low income, or too small to support a family, but isn't, hey, I'm at the end stage of my career level down payment.
That's what I was going to ask. What is it that needs to be done? We're trying to encourage that mid-market. I mean, it's zoning, it's infrastructure, right? I mean,
so,
I think,
go ahead, please.
I think a typical example is what's just happened over the last 6 months on a property that was on Oak Creek Road, which is near the state line. There was a request to change it for high-density residential. Commission turned it down, and it was based on infrastructure, especially the road. The developer was going to put in the utilities. No road improvement was proposed on their part. But if I'd been a commissioner, I would have voted the same way the commission did. I would have turned it down because of safety of the road and where it enters the Huntsville Highway. I think it would create a danger, and it would disrupt that neighborhood. So I think if you had, a better road there, but it's not a really good place for putting a traffic light either, and left-hand turns on that headed towards Huntsville. I think there was a real safety factor that the commission made the right decision, but if it would have been on the the highway itself, I think they would have voted for doing it because we already have some there. So road infrastructure and the utilities in particular places is going to restrict the commission wanting to change the zoning to the higher density residential areas.
So how do we affect that change? That's what we're trying to do, plan for that. I mean, we gotta identify areas we want to grow, we gotta get the road in place, I mean, I'm sure that now overlaps with our growth plan. Charles, you want any input in that? I mean,
I do. I'm not speaking against what the mayor said, because I do agree, but to make it profitable for the builders, that's why the request for the rezoning to a higher density, because the property values in the county have somewhat far exceeded the ability to make money on a subdivision. And that's where, I guess you could say, the developers are looking at it, more lots, I can come out and profit, because of the price of to build the roads, install the water lines, sewer lines, those sorts of things. That's where, the reason, I don't know how to get past that.
Carl, address what planning and zoning did this week about the additional residential structure.
Okay, this week in the planning commission, we were discussing accessory dwelling units, which would allow a property owner, most likely it couldn't happen in a subdivision because of covenants and restrictions, most likely one dwelling unit per lot. And that's what our zoning goes with now, is one dwelling unit per parcel. But if this accessory dwelling unit is passed by the county commission and actually goes into effect, at that point, they would build a somewhere between 600 feet smallest to up to, what is proposed right now, it hasn't passed, but up to 1,500 square feet. No more than 2 bedrooms. They could have kitchen, that sort of stuff, maximum of 4. They could live, they have to use the same driveway, can connect to the same water meter, things like that, or not, they don't, that's up to them. Electric is based off of what Fayetteville Public Utilities, whether they CT'd or had a separate meter, that sort of thing, that would be up to the utilities. What got this somewhat started was we had the lack of housing, and we were trying to figure out a way that we could help maybe elderly people that needed a place that needed help but wanted to be independent, that would put their house possibly on the market if they could move in with next door to their family. But not only that, if kids coming home from college, need a place to go, they could do something like that also. We tried to contact, I did speak with Ms. Dana at FPU, and she said they had several people calling, questioning, could they do this? So that was Knox Smith from FPU also. We met in the office with him and discussed this. So we're trying to cover all our bases and I guess get more housing available in the county. That's our goal.
It'll be faster than developing one. It'll be a lot faster because the infrastructure is already there. You shouldn't have to build new driveways. It should just be a faster way to get housing. And we get these calls every week repeatedly. Hey, can I move my mother-in-law behind my house? Can I, my kid's coming home from college. He doesn't really want to live in the house anymore. Things like that. So we hear that a lot.
Not necessarily need a microphone, let me just ask a quick question that may help address some of this. So, in the present scenario, what prevents that from occurring without the approval of the accessory dwelling unit, the ADU? Does it become an addressing issue where you?
It's a restriction and it's a 1 acre lot.
It's
You
a
could do
zoning
it on a 1
issue.
acre lot, where before that's the minimum amount that you could.
Okay.
have a
Well, it's
residence.
one principal dwelling per parcel.
One principal dwelling that's enforced at the planning commission?
The zoning.
At the zoning, okay, understood.
I was just gonna say, for me, looking over this, this is not new news. Like, I feel like we've talked about all of this. I mean, my friends, my peers, we live here because we wanna live here. And I know that I'm never gonna get a Starbucks, and I'm never gonna get a Target. And I'm okay with driving to get those things, as long as my child is in the school and taken care of by my family and friends. Like, I'm good with that. I just think that we need to preserve our history, we need to take what we have and make it better and keep it up. I mean, if we've got properties that need to be cleaned up, we need to take them and clean them up. We need to make it the best we can. And I know that we need that money to do those things, and I know it's a fine line, but for me, I'm fine with the way it is, we just have to take care of what we've got. If that makes sense.
Right, so, if I, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if I may, one of so a lot of this touches on zoning. You know, ADU is, or, you know, mother-in-law suites or granny flats or whatever term you want to use, are a great tool for, it's not exactly a fix, but it's a Band-Aid that can help alleviate the problem of affordable housing. But these go in lockstep with our zoning code, and we also did a grow and preserve exercise and a scenario exercise to say, hey, you've got all of this land. We have a vision statement that says Lincoln County's got a proud history. It's got beautiful agricultural land, beautiful undeveloped land that we want to preserve. And so there's a sort of a balance that we have to strike between taking most of the, and is it in here? I scroll up. Most of the land and preserving it, and then finding those spots where maybe you have brownfields, areas that used to be developed and are dilapidated, and you can get grant funding. So that's one thing, you can look at brownfield redevelopment sites where you can say, hey, here's an area that used to have a business or used to have an industrial site that isn't used anymore. How much would it take to deconstruct this? Maybe it's already got utilities. It's a great way to kind of revitalize or reutilize that land. And then only growing in certain areas that are ready for it, because, you know, like we've already talked about, roads and utilities are going to dictate to the council and to the county where they can even afford to assume new infrastructure. You know, if roads need to be maintained and we've already got issues with maintenance there, is it really a great idea to assume a bunch of new roads, even if the developers pay for them up front, because then you've got to come back and maintain them? Or will the existing utilities reach out and fix them? So it's easy to say, I like what I've got, when you're not the kid that's just graduated from college who's like, who's despairing that they'll never be able to buy a home because they have to save up $100,000 for a down payment. That's a lot of money. And most, I think the demographic now is that most millennials, so over 50% of millennials, and that's not even college kids, right? College kids are Gen Z these days. I'm a millennial. So like late 20s to early 40s are relying on their parents in order to become homeowners. Lincoln County also has people who are moving there who want the same opportunities and abilities. You know, what you found is great and beautiful. If you have something and you realize it's nice, a lot of times other people appreciate it for the same reasons. So it's about finding a balance, and that's sort of what we want to do with this recommendation phase, right? People are, I think, mostly, well, there are issues and conflicts with how things have been developing in Lincoln County. As we've noted, hey, housing is really expensive. You're not going to get less expensive housing if you say we're not going to build any more housing. I'll just tell you that right now. Housing won't get cheaper if you don't add any more supply. Maybe that's the trade-off, and the county commission decides that's the route that they want to go, and that's their prerogative. But housing will not get less expensive if you don't build more of it. Now, you can also ruin and overbuild a really nice place. So it's about finding a balance of, hey, maybe we don't have a bunch of huge subdivisions, and there probably is not a major demand for, multi-hundred lot subdivisions, and ultimately the developer's profit line's going to determine that. But maybe it's, my son wants to move out. I've got a lot of acreage here. Let's just build a 1,000 square foot or even a 600 square foot, 1 bedroom, 1 bath in the backyard that's going to look nice because it's on my property. I'm incentivized to make sure that, my property values stay high. And so with that accessory dwelling unit amendment that you look at, you can say, hey, it has to be on owner-occupied housing, right? It can't be somebody that's coming in and buying a bunch of rental stuff that's not going to take care of it. And then you've got a new unit of housing that exists in the back that hasn't destroyed, because the home's already there, the lot's already built out. So you're not developing on undeveloped or agricultural land, you're just creating a new unit of housing and more affordable housing on something that already exists without a high burden of cost to the county. It's a win-win there. And so it's just a matter of making sure that when you craft that amendment to the county, that you make sure that everything is going to look the way it is, and you've got checks and balances there for growth. And so really, that's sort of the question. That's why we're here. What I'm asking is I can put recommendations that are really, really pro-housing and pro-growth. Or I cannot put any pro-growth recommendations in this plan. And that's up to the residents of Lincoln County, ultimately. But if you think that we have a goal of increasing housing affordability, I need to know what you think is the best solution, or what are multiple solutions that we can approach that can help achieve that.
So, I'm a little confused, I guess, on some of this. We need housing. We need jobs. If you bring in jobs in industry, you gotta have places to put them. But then you gotta have roads to support them. So where is the balance? How do we figure out the balance of this? We want growth. We bought land for industrial parks. We're trying to improve industry. We're trying to bring in industry. Some of the banking industry that was in here recently said we need high-income housing to support the industry that's coming in. We can't build it because then it sits idle. We can't build low-income housing. I guess I'm confused on how to answer your questions on this, or what you're wanting on this. If we stay the same we are, or the old saying, if you do the same thing you're always done, you're always going to get the same result. And if we're wanting to be positive and move forward, I'm trying to figure out how to answer your questions. And I guess, am I making any sense, or am I just rambling?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, I think I can say this. You can't always in the planning business. But I think that probably most of you agree the government's primary role is not to come in and solve all these problems, provide housing, right? The county doesn't build housing, developers build housing. The county doesn't build businesses. They provide safeguards. You have emergency support. They provide public utilities and schools, so public goods and services. So the county's role in this is not, hey, we're going to go and create industry. or we're going to go and create affordable housing. It's what can the county do to make sure the safeguards are appropriate, AKA the regulations are not so stringent that affordable housing can't be built or that industry is discouraged, while making sure that the safeguards are responsible enough to make sure that the land that you have is developed well and responsibly with respect so that your community grows and flourishes rather than, you don't have somebody pumping in something from next door that ruins your natural resources at no cost to them and at great cost to you. So the question is, what can the county do to help encourage that business growth, that job growth? What are they doing something right now that that prevents that? And sometimes you do look at them to offer some initial financial assistance with the thought that this will sort of recoup itself in spades. So, you don't think of the government as, or the county in this instance, as creating jobs, but rather supporting community through public goods. So going back to the housing example, right now, the government says you can only have one residence on every lot of land. And the government said, well, maybe this safeguard that, the county can look at it and say, maybe that's a little too stringent, and we can relax that a little by allowing an additional dwelling unit as long as it fits within, these parameters so that the community is not overrun and that it maintains its character while still providing additional units. And that's just an example. And you can do the same thing in industry. If you only have 2 lots in the entire county zoned for industry, and you say, well, why isn't anybody building here? Maybe that's the issue, is that there's not enough land for industrial jobs, or they don't feel like the utilities can support it. And sometimes you do have to put an investment into utilities and say, okay, we've got additional water resources or an agreement with the city, or we're willing to finance this out to make this viable so that your jobs come in here and we recoup the cost over the long run with the additional property taxes of the new industry development and new sales taxes and new people that come and live who are buying and spending their money in Lincoln County. So it's not, will Lincoln County go out and build this new industry, but it's what is Lincoln County doing that prevents this? Or what can they do to help encourage it?
So, Brenda, I think one thought to consider, and the mayor mentioned an example that's maybe pretty relevant here. I think the answer to your question, what can we do right now to immediately solve these issues, is you can't do anything today that's going to immediately solve these issues. The way I look at it, the hope and the approach I think the plan is that, using this example of the subdivision, if this property or this area were identified in some kind of plan as an opportunity for growth, as an area that could be an opportunity for growth, then sometime over the next few years, maybe that intersection lands its way into a capital improvement plan that can build upon that. Maybe the utilities in the area can land themselves into a capital improvement plan, so that in theory, when a developer does have an idea, you build to that, not necessarily promoting it, but now you've eliminated some of the reasons why you may not be able to approve a development that could potentially provide some improvements to the community immediately. So it's a sort of a vision and a guide, and not necessarily a roadmap to where you put transportation infrastructure, utility improvements, but in the broad sense, when those decisions are being made, maybe it helps in some way. And then it makes the decision a little bit easier. In this scenario, there's obviously some infrastructure issues that led to the decision that was made.
So what can we do in this plan to affect that change. We're not gonna identify every intersection that needs to improve,
No.
you know, in the next 20 minutes, but what can we do in our plan? Who does that?
Well,
How do we establish a mechanism for somebody to?
yeah, so Ethan, isn't a map of some sort inclusion in our deliverable, zoning?
So, yeah, one of the things that we'll provide, and like I said, this is coming out of zoning land use, is called a future land use map. And it will not be a zoning map. I think I sent an example of this to Daniel, who I think forwarded it on in a link. But it's more a typology. Most of the county is agricultural. Most of the county is zoned agricultural. What most of the county will say is, you know, in the future land use map will be, the land use should be preservation. We want to keep it agricultural, we want to keep it undeveloped. What it is now, we want to keep it that way. But we'll identify some areas through what we've done in our scenario planning, where it's like, hey, you know, a lot of the communities have identified this as right for business development or right for housing development. And we want to see sort of some of our existing communities flourish so that we can create, you know, an opportunity for new neighbors in a way that is sensitive to the context. So you might see like a few areas with the future land use of traditional neighborhood development. And that will be, we can put new homes, but they need to match the existing context of the neighborhoods. And we'll kind of target areas that already have a decent amount of homes, because the infrastructure there is going to be better, the utilities out there will exist, and you know, here's another one of your something that Lincoln County will have to think over and decide is a sliding scale, growth or no growth. It's also density or no density. The more people you get together in a smaller area, and density I know is a bad word, but we had a lot of people complain. 42 complaints that there was a lack of retail and recreational options. We want better places to eat. We want chain restaurants. We want, even if it's not better, we want more options. And those businesses can only exist with a customer base that turn a profit. So that comes down. Like you know, you look at Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A's got a model, and Dollar General has a model on, does the population support this? We're not even going to think about moving there until we know that we've got enough customers. So you can actually preserve more land by building you know, neighborhoods close together, and it's cheaper for the county because all of the roads and the utilities are close together. But it's a sliding scale, right? It's not, we're going to throw everything in 1 square mile and then touch nothing else. And it's not, we're going to be irresponsible with development and just let it pop up scattershot across the county. And so that's a matter of balance. But
I think one of the,
yeah, you asked.
one of the helpful things of an exercise like this, to your point about like, as the example of if, let's say we really wanted to grow industry, but we only had 2 places, you know, that were very small and weren't, you know, you could, an outsider could look at that and say, well, obviously, here's the reason why you're not meeting your objective, because you're overly constrained or you have restrictions in place that prevent you from, you know, doing what you say you want to do. And as you gather all this information and, you know, and even come at it from an outsider's point of view, do you have tools or analysis to say, here's where we think you're overly, you know, the restrictions that are in place, the government's preventing you from doing what you say you want to do because of this, and we recommend you relax this, or you need to, you know, because I don't know that we know the answer to that. I think that's what we're saying. Is like, it's hard to know, you know, do we have something that we're doing that's where we're preventing ourselves from, like, you know, meeting what we want to do unknowingly.
And that's the reason I asked earlier, kind of what was the root of, you know, Yeah, no baseline. You're trying to put your starting.
To answer that, it's a yes and a no. We'll provide sort of a basic, you'll see that on a basic level when you look at your existing zoning map, which I understand doesn't really exist except for in theory. And that zoning map was created in 2014, and now the software that you have doesn't display an entire map of every zone. It's more of like a tax assessment map where you select a parcel and you can see what it's zoned for. So one of my initial recommendations is, let's get this in a way where you can view the entire county's zones as they are now, how they exist in a comprehensive sort of overview. And then once you have that, you can compare it to the future land use map and see, hey, where are areas that are more narrowly zoned currently than the future land use map shows. And you can look at those areas and say, all right, here's where we can look at encouraging developers to build, or rezoning, or one of the other things that I wrote down initially, and you don't see this a lot because it's sort of time intensive, but I think it's really effective in smaller communities, is an RFI, which is a request for information from local developers, where you go out and, a lot of people want to make sure that people doing business in their county or residents of their county or members of the community, that their dollars that are going into it and coming out of it stay home, so to speak. And so if you have a bunch of local builders whether it's commercial or residential, bring them in, or send out sort of a community or countywide, hey, we want to hear your thoughts on what is preventing you from building. And you don't have, again, they're trying to make a profit. So they might come in and say, hey, you didn't charge us all these fees, it would be a lot cheaper for us. And, you could listen to them. And another recommendation that goes along with that is, well, let's look at the neighboring counties who also have a lot of agricultural land. What are they charging for their permit fees, or their rezoning fees, or their conditional use fees, or for their, site inspection, housing inspection, their certificate of occupancy. All these are fees that raise the bottom line for the developer. And if yours aren't competitive, maybe you do need to think about lowering them. If they just come in and blow smoke through your ears because they want a cheaper house, that's up to the discretion of the county as they get that information. But you can glean some real valuable stuff, like, you want us to build along existing highways, but all of that land is twice as expensive as the land directly behind it, so it's not really feasible for us, and we need those roads. And so that's when you as the county come together and say, okay, where's our balance? Where can we find a happy medium of, we want to maintain safety, we want to make sure that we can afford to assume these new roads, and you come up with something where maybe you just rezone a certain area, that road is going to support multiple developers, new housing, so that you're not taking on 15 new roads, you're taking on one new road. Or maybe you overbuild the road so that it's safer as the subdivision is bought out and people start living and driving on it. Or maybe you just ask them to include the signal and the cost there, hey, how much do you need to make this work? And can we pencil in a new signal here? And if we do you need X number of additional units? Can we create an agreement where, your density is slightly higher, and in exchange, we get this, public service put in there.
So we don't have a lot of time. I just want to make sure we're getting input from everybody on, I know there's other topics that you wanted to hit. Do we need to move on here? I don't know. I just want to make sure we're getting, that you're getting everything you need, because some people may have ideas on some of these other topics.
Yeah. I was gonna say the same, just not as nice.
Yeah, we've kind of touched on utilities and infrastructure, because at the end of the day, it's the reason it's comprehensive plans, because they're all intertwined. You can't look at infrastructure without thinking about how it affects housing, or housing without how zoning impacts it. When it comes to how the county thinks about preparing for planning for this over the next 20 years, you can kind of silo them into categories, but they're still going to connect to one another. Yeah, we do have utilities and transportation on there, and then within the housing and community development, we really didn't talk much about the community development side. A lot of people want to see something done with the Elk River. They want to make sure that it's preserved, and they would really like to be able to utilize the natural resource more. So there is a park opportunity. That's tough because parks don't make monies for counties really, unless you build ball fields and charge people to use them, and they cost money. So, where are you getting the money to support that sort of thing? And, maybe that is, maybe you guys want to see a grant writer position filled, and you can evaluate that position on an annual basis on whether or not the grant writer is bringing in more money than their salary costs. If that stops being the case, maybe you need a better grant writer or no grant writer at all. But these are sort of ideas. I'm happy to hear anything on all three of our topics if anybody's got any other ideas. Also, Daniel, I will be happy to go through you to the steering committee. If anybody here doesn't like sharing things in public or doesn't want to argue, or, you can send something, you've got thoughts written out to Daniel, and Daniel can send them to me. And when I put this draft list together, I'll send it out, and you won't hurt my feelings if you say that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, we need to take that out, there's no way this is one of the plan, right? That's fine for me. You guys are paying me to give you a product, and I'll tell you what I think based on what I got, and then you can say what works and what doesn't in the county. That's what you're here for.
I personally like the idea of a grant writer. I don't know, Bill, do you have any experience with other places?
Take a lot off me.
To me, it seems like they would pay for themselves.
Here's,
The thing is the matching funds you have to come up with. It's gotta come from something.
And managing the grant. Once you get it, you got to report on it and keep up with it.
Most
There's
of
a lot to
them,
it.
you gotta kick in 20-25%. That's, you get a big project, that's a lot of money. The county's, I don't think, it's loaded with money right now.
here's one point for your information on the brownfields. We do have a brownfield identification grant that will be taking effect. There's a total of 4 other steps. Each one our development districts handling that. But after the ID of them, then there's a priority grant on the thing. Then there's a phase 1 and 2, studying in the order of priority. Then there's the big size of the grant, which would be remediation, that property for a new use. So we are working on that.
So I'm just looking at this, the number on the right, that's just how many people mention that subject that it is. So like jobs, 12 people said there need more jobs.
Some semblance of that, we made up the categories, but, we put 12 of those responses that were related to different causes, so yes.
Okay.
But they're based on number of responses.
Okay. Well, I push back on that a little bit. You have a great industry base for your size here. I realize you're catching up a little bit still from Mike and Goodman, but you have brought in a lot of industry in the last several years. Airtech's double what they were going to be. Copperwell has grown greatly the last couple of years. Aaron's had a hiccup, we're ramping back up. So I think you've done, and with what y'all done with planning for the future with the land and the pads that, Lane's got the grants for the pads and I think we're even looking at the spec building, I think, is that right? So you've done everything you can do with the industry growth and jobs. If you ask all the industry, they can't find enough people. So I don't know what what these people are asking for on jobs. I know you get these things and you have people say these things and they just don't know what they're, necessarily.
Well, for example, you have
Still, yeah, but yeah, I just would like to push back. Y'all got a great industry base. You've done everything you can, for industry right now. And yeah, that's all. I was just make that comment.
Well, you're right in that, somebody comes to a public meeting and they particularly had a hard time finding a job, and certainly the job is going to.
And some of that's,
So we're looking for the trend.
and some of that's workforce. They may not have the right skills for the jobs that are out there. So it's. But yeah, the 12. I mean, that's I don't think it's a major concern. But you guys get any industry, they can't find the people.
And I think part of that is when we presented earlier, really focusing on the top trends. What are the top 2 or 3 out of the whole list? Because you certainly got.
Yeah, I mean, 45, 42, and 37 are a lot bigger than 12.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is based on basically 1% of our population in Lincoln County.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That is correct.
Understood.
So, yeah.
Which we were, I was pleased at the turnout. But I mean, it's a small percentage, understand, but it was.
Which statistically significant.
Threshold, right? Yes.
Well, and also, sometimes what types of people come to those that are, to make comments. Yeah. So, yeah, just pointing that out.
We're not gonna use one.
Any other thoughts, comments? Ideas? Certainly, I'll be around afterwards, as long as needed, but anything else you want to share, we can get into record or include or look at or not include?
If we're talking about Elk River development, I said that in Camp Blunt, it's the perfect place to do that. With the park already going, next to the city park. Opportunity. I'm not specific.
And I got a phone call this week about some interest in doing, I think what it sounds like, maybe the next thing there. So that's a great opportunity.
What we would call the lower elk is gonna be opened up now, because right now, Harm's Dam, we've had some setbacks on it, there's people that don't want it taken out, but that's gonna open up the lower part of the river for recreation, so that's gonna basically nearly double the amount of river that we will have, for tourism, so, but there are things, and everybody that's been on the river knows, those access points, that would be the biggest thing if we could do something better on those, because the access points, some of them, after a big weekend, there's a lot of trash there, actual getting in and out needs improving, so those are some things that we could do right now.
TVA controls it first, those river access points. So, as far as us improving, we can't do it.
Well, we've got TVA approval on it, it's just we ain't got the money to do it. To clean it up, some people that helped on that part getting it cleaned up. I know you put some gravel that was going in there at Frito Lake, because sometimes access even getting to what we can control, and thank you for what you've done, which that Tim has done, actual getting in, especially that one.
Well, what I'll do is be looking for the future land use map draft in the next week or so, and you will be able to comment on that. There were a couple areas in here, particularly right around here, that were pretty controversial about whether or not they were grow or preserve. Then I'll do a first draft of it and send it out for everybody's feedback. And, we take those, I'll take that into consideration and update it. And ultimately, the steering committee and then the planning commission and then the county commission will have the final say on whether it's adopted or not, and what we need to do to get it adopted. but we'll get input on what we want our final draft to look like. And then if there's anything else in the other 3 categories, I don't know, Daniel, do you want to be the go-between where you collect responses and send them to me? Or I can open up another survey that we just share within the steering committee for this, for recommendations, if we want to do it that way. Whatever is the easiest, so that if there were any thoughts here that people didn't want to express or didn't get a chance to, or you're really more of a writer than you are a speaker, that's all totally fine. We'll collect those either way. What's the best way to get that to me?
It doesn't matter, either way, it's fine. Yeah, there are also people who couldn't be here today that I'm sure will have input, so it's up to you. I can take them and forward them on, or you can do the survey, either way, it's fine.
Okay. Well, I'll just write out a little questionnaire and I'll send it to you, and you forward it to the steering committee, and then they can all send it back to you, and we'll just get it collected in that format. They'll be able to hit reply and just fill it out.
Okay.
Well, just in closing, that's all right, just say that we could certainly draft recommendations based on the input that we receive with our blinders on, but a large part of the point today was to get input from the community that you represent. So, it may not seem like there's been a lot of input. I've had a lot of really good, I've made a lot of notes and had a lot of good input. So it's been very helpful to us. But again, to create some recommendations that are not just us typing in our office, not any input from the community. So it's been helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for coming. We'll send out the form to you, and you can reply back to me. Anybody that's not here that you know of, please forward that. We want this to be out there to get as much input as possible. And again, thank you again to FPU for all your help and helping coordinate it. So, thanks.
Thanks, everybody.